And welcome to Read the Room podcast. I'm Chandler.
And I'm Alyssa. And this podcast is about books, relationships, and the relationships in books.
Today we are starting on our Taylor Jenkins Reid bibliography. Just the core four, though.
Yeah, just the core four. We'll probably come back and read some of our previous work in the future, but we're just going to start with the core four.
I have read one of her previous work. So.
Did you like it?
I did, yeah, but it was definitely more rom-com than historical
Contemporary
fiction.
Romance?
Yes, contemporary romance, yes.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Yeah, but before we dive into that, let's talk about a book that we're both reading. Well, not both simultaneously, but what book we're reading or a book we want to talk about.
Yeah, I am currently reading A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers. It is a sci-fi book about a sentient AI. Not really too sure how to properly say that word.
Sounded good to me.
A sentient AI who is inhabiting a body kit, which allows her to, walk instead of just being installed into a ship, as she was programmed to be. And I feel like it's like a really good analogy, metaphor, what have you, for neurodivergence. Like she's having a really hard time in her body and feeling really uncomfortable and not knowing what to do, or how to act around people, and having to research beforehand and all that. And it's like one of those books with like two different stories going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And the other one is about a clone child who was
What is this book?
It's sci-fi, man. Who was born onto a world that basically she's a slave and works in a factory and then escapes and then finds like a broken down junk ship that has an AI in it, and the AI in the ship, Owl, raises her basically and helps her escape.
Wait, is this a movie now?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe if it is, I want to watch it.
I feel like I've heard this synopsis.
It could be.
The owl part is what got me.
Yeah.
Maybe you told me about this.
I might have.
Okay, sorry, go on.
Yeah. And just told it to you in such detail that you now think back on
I feel like I must have heard it somewhere else.
Yeah, well, it's a great book. It's the second of the Wayfarers series from Becky Chambers. The first is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which I would also recommend, but you don't have to read that one before reading this one. And I'm planning on reading pretty much everything else by Becky Chambers because it's good stuff.
It's so interesting to hear what you're actually reading versus the stuff that we talk about. We talk primarily about contemporary romance. These four books we're about to talk about aside, but we talk about those sort of genres, and then in your personal time you're reading sci-fi or you're reading, it's funny because the book I want to talk about is The Inmate by Frida McFadden. I just finished that a couple of days ago. Have you heard of Frida McFadden?
I have not.
Okay, so she wrote The Housemaid, and it's really popular right now. It's the book with the keyhole in the eye looking through it. It's about a girl who starts working as a prison as the new RN. Actually, not RN. What's the one up from RN? It's it's
I couldn't tell you.
I can't remember. Sorry to the nurses out there. There's one up from an RN where you can give prescriptions and stuff. Anyways, the point is she goes to work in a penitentiary, and it's a bad one. It's where all the murderers go, and it's rough. Anyways, you start to learn that she knows one of the inmates there was her high school boyfriend, and she put him in jail for life, and she starts working at the prison. Yeah, so Frida McFadden does horror thriller, and I'm for spooky October I've been reading a lot of horror thriller, that sort of things.
I also noticed for spooky October we both have black nail polish.
I always have black nail polish. So
I also always
unless
have black
it's
nail
summer,
polish.
my nail polish is always black.
What is it in summer?
I'll usually do a white or a cream.
Okay, gotcha. Very neutral.
Yeah, I don't you will never see me with the red. But anyways, back to my amazing book.
Yeah.
So Frida, she is an incredible author. She's really good at creating the suspense and the twists and turns in books. So anyways, the story is that she moves back to her hometown. She starts working at this penitentiary, and then she comes across her ex, and she realizes that maybe she was wrong and that it was somebody else, and she starts seeing a guy that was also there the night that this all happened. And so it's very like, which one of these guys is actually the best? And you feel like as the reader you're like, I know something she doesn't know, but you don't actually. Like that book of all books, the twist, I genuinely didn't see the last one coming. It's definitely worth reading. All of her works that I've read so far are amazing. So that's my book.
What was the author again?
Frida McFadden. Are you messing with me?
No, I'm not.
I thought I said it so much that I was like, oh no, he's teasing me.
You had brought up that the author's great and that we should all read all of the books.
Yeah.
I love that.
I've only read 2 of her books, but I can't wait to read more.
I mean, same here with Becky Chambers.
Yeah.
I love that in this little intro, what are we reading?
Yeah.
Here are these random books kind of thing. We know not to do spoilers.
Yeah.
But then when we're talking about the book that we're actually talking about, we're going hard.
Like if you're coming here to hear about Evelyn Hugo, I assume you've read it and or you don't mind about the spoilers because we're going to spoil it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like especially with Evelyn Hugo, it is kind of hard to talk about the relationships in the book
and not spoil
like the big twist,
so
the big reveal. So Taylor Jenkins Reid, I think that we should probably talk about her as a whole a little bit before we jump into any of her books. I've read the core 4, as you like to call it, and I think it's After I Do, it's called.
Yep, I've read After I Do.
Yeah, so those are the 5 I've read so far. I like the TJR universe. Yeah. It's fun.
So good.
And it's interesting too, especially with Evelyn Hugo, that like she doesn't completely, fabricate an entirely new universe. She still has Little Women and Anna Karenina as like big stories in there.
Well, she does name, even in Carrie Soto, real tennis players. Like she does aspects of it. It's never like Nikki Chan, like the people she faces. It's always like in the background she'll name people who were actually tennis players. Or Daisy Jones and the Six, they name actual bands.
Did they do that in Evelyn Hugo though?
Yes.
Were there actual actors name dropped? Like, oh, there's...
I don't know about actual actors, but definitely like the movies and stuff existed. Like some of them. You're right. And like plays and things like that. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I don't think I know actors of that time.
Yeah, me neither.
To like have picked up on it. I only knew about the tennis because I listened to another podcast and she was a tennis player and like actually I think she was a golfer, the girl hosting the podcast, and she talked about how she heard tennis names that she knows, but I'm assuming she's just like a sporty gal. And I was like, oh, interesting, because I didn't know them. But so it is.
Yeah, and it's just TJR coming up with her own history, and it's a lot of fun because she builds on like our modern day idea of what
Hollywood.
What Hollywood was, what the 50s, 60s, 70s was, like in all these books.
Yeah.
Even 90s with Carrie Soto.
Yeah. She really builds too. Like each one is covering like gets later. Like I know Evelyn Hugo technically is the most present day one, but because of the...
But it's also the least too.
Totally. That's interesting. It's old Hollywood vibes for most of the book.
Yeah. I read an interview of TJR about Carrie Soto specifically, and asking about the decades that these stories exist in. And she was saying that, like, writing the 90s was actually a little bit easier because I had to do less research because I existed in the 90s. I have a lot to say about, like, 90s fashion.
She's so cool, also.
Yeah, and, like, it's really interesting because, like, a lot of these stories are playing off of, like, our idea of what the 70s were like or what Hollywood in the 60s was like. So, it's fun to exist in that world. And to do so through Taylor Jenkins Reid's fictional history, because she can build it in whatever way that she wants, really. And
she can, yeah. I like that, but she stays like somehow she builds her. Sorry, I'm pouring water while we talk. Somehow
this is terrible podcast etiquette.
Sorry, I was thirsty. But she creates a universe that it makes it more believable. Like the little things she adds in from the real world, though, that makes it seem more credible and makes me as a reader be able to dive more in. Like when she's talking about other bands popular in Daisy Jones at the time, and I'm recognizing the names, it just makes it seem more credible to me.
Yeah, and I also like I'm a big fan of Almost Famous, the movie.
Oh, it's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, and having like watched that so much and like wanted to exist in that world, like this gave me another opportunity. Well, not this Evelyn Hugo, but
yeah.
Daisy Jones gave me another opportunity to live in that, and
Actually,
that's so fun.
I did want to say one fact I know about Taylor Jenkins Reid. It pertains to Daisy Jones, but I'm going to say it now because we're talking about her. Is I don't know if you knew this, but you know the part in Daisy Jones and the Six where it's early on in the book and she's sitting with a guy. This is pre the Six, and she is at a restaurant. I think it's like a date or something, and she makes a joke, and he says, "I'm gonna write that down and use it," and she says, "I'm not your muse. I'm not your muse. I'm the something or something." Anyway, she says something along those lines. So Taylor Jenkins Reid said that she literally pulled that from an experience in her real life when she moved to Hollywood to be an author. She had moved there, and she turned that into her inspiration for the entire character of Daisy Jones, was how men treated her and like tried to steal her ideas.
She turned him into the muse in
Which
a
is
way.
Hilarious. And then I think it also had to do with the fact that in the book, Daisy, there's a guy early on that she like fixes his lyrics or something, like a musician, and that song becomes his biggest hit. Yeah. And she's like, "I fucking wrote that." I think that was also like taken from her experience on that with that guy.
It does make me wonder like what it was that TJR influenced. Like what's out there.
I'm
not
so
credited
curious.
to her.
I just think she's so cool, and she's not like she's
not
not
like
other
other girls.
authors. She's a cool author.
Oh,
I don't
God.
know what it is, but anytime I see her, I'm like, damn, she's so cool. That's why we started with her books, because not only am I obsessed with all of them, but she's just really cool as an author, in my opinion.
Yeah, and let's be real, because Taylor Jenkins Reid also has like a lot of media coming out with Daisy Jones and the Six, and then Evelyn Hugo, I think, is the next one coming out.
With the writer's strike, who knows where they're at with these, but I know that every single one of these core 4 books has rights already bought to them. So
no, of course.
I did look that up.
Oh
and
my God, Carrie Soto is going to be so good.
I know. I know. And also, I looked up to see if there would be a 5th book in the series, and it sounds like she only does groups of 4. I think the series, like this whole, I know it's not a series, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I would be...
She wants to write something completely different, is what she said on an interview. Which, I mean, she doesn't have to. She can do whatever she wants. Who knows what'll come out, but...
I find that very interesting that she would dare depart from this world.
Like, good for her, though. She's made a name for herself. Pretty much anything she does will turn to gold, I bet.
Yeah, that's true.
She's a badass.
To
imagine
stay...
she goes into thriller or something.
Oh my God, yeah. To stay in the core 4 universe that she's built. Like,
so I've coined that phrase. I came up with it.
Oh, cool. I didn't know if that was like the official.
I
call them the modern
TJRs.
TJRs.
But the other ones are actually technically nowadays. So these
I see.
But they're the most recently published.
That's what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, sorry.
Because like she's crushing it with those.
Oh, so good. But even her like previous works are so like, I know you've only read the one book, but you really I mean, we will, but the other 3 are also so good.
Okay, so there's 8 total then in the
so there's
bibliography.
One True Loves, Maybe in Another Life, Forever Interrupted, and After I Do. So those are her first 4, and then it goes into the 4 that we'll talk about.
Gotcha.
In this season.
Well, be ready for us to talk about those earlier 4 books.
Yeah.
Later down the line. I've got some reading to do, but until then, we will talk about the core 4, the modern 4, starting with Evelyn Hugo.
Let's start with, what did you actually think of the book? Like, did you like it? Did you love it? What were your thoughts?
I did like it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I've never really been someone who's like really into like old Hollywood or even new Hollywood. Like,
oh my
I
God,
don't
how
really
dare you?
care that much about, like, you know, I'll go watch the movies, but like I don't really care too much about the drama and the gossip.
Oh my God, I love it. I live for it.
Yeah.
What rating did you give it?
Oh, I think I probably would have given it a 4-star.
4? Chandler is a rough rater. So like that's pretty decent.
Yeah, that's, you know, it was definitely better than 3.5, not quite 4.5. You know, it was a good book. I enjoyed reading it.
I don't do half stars.
Might read it again.
Yeah.
Someday. But it, like, you know, it didn't like change me.
Oh my God, I loved it. I can't. Mine was like a strong 5-star. Like I would give it 6 if I could.
You love giving 5 stars though.
That's not true. That's not true. I've read 100 and how many books this year? 125, and I've given less than 25 5 stars.
Okay.
So watch your back. That's
still like almost a quarter, though.
Well, if you think about that statistically, and the books I'm choosing are like popular. Like I'm tend to be drawn to like Reese's book picks and things that have already like been, gone through the process of knowing that they're relatively good.
I've read 37 books, and I've given 5 stars to 2 of them so far this year. What were the 2?
Sorry.
It was Pillars of the Earth.
Okay.
And Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow.
Oh, Tomorrow. We're gonna. We have to talk about that at some point.
About Tomorrow.
So good. I also gave that book a 5-star.
I feel like we should be talking about that book right now.
Okay, wait, no. I wanna talk about Evelyn. What did you actually think of the character Evelyn? Because I really want to dig into Taylor, her main characters. Did you actually like them?
Yeah, I did, and I know that there's people who like. I think that like they're too abrasive or intense, and like
she's very calculated as a woman.
Yeah,
especially in that time.
Well, and especially like the older version of her that we get in like the present day in 2017.
Yeah.
And I feel like old women who. How old was she?
She died at. Oh God, sorry, spoiler. She died at what, 70 or 80? Somewhere in there, I can't remember.
And I feel like anyone who gets to that age is generally a little bit more, blasé. Will say what they want, like no time for pleasantries or what have you. And I do wonder. She was
79. Sorry.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she didn't have a filter. That's a good way of saying that.
Well, I also wonder just how much of that persona of her, like no filter, being a bit older, like kind of done with the world and like. It's changed outside of her.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that bleeds into the Evelyn Hugo that we experienced in her younger years? Because this is the story that she's telling.
Yeah.
Right. So it's one. It
also kind of makes her an unreliable narrator.
Absolutely.
Same as some of Taylor Jenkins Reid's other books is like a big conversation around, but this one too.
Mm-hmm. But no, I loved Evelyn. She's sick.
And also, like, furthermore, Evelyn, like, you see early in the book the way that she manipulates people to get what she wants. Like, for example, her first husband, Ernie Diaz. She manipulated... Actually, honestly, all of her husbands was a manipulation, if you really dig into all of them.
I wouldn't say all of them.
Except for Harry, but still, it was to cover up something else, so it was planned.
There was one husband...
that she actually loved, Don Adler, the abusive one.
Where it was like a fiery romance. And
but it did help her career. Remember, she was pushed into that by Harry. Like, none of her relationships other than Celia St. James were authentic. Not a single one.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the case with a lot of celebrity relationships.
Totally.
Or at least the ones we hear about, right? Because like
100%.
If there's like a super famous actor who has a wife that he just like met... at the beach one day, who like might not have recognized him. That does happen though.
Like Hugh Jackman's wife, well, they just got divorced, but his was like a nobody, and he'd been with her for like 45 years or something.
Yeah, and you just like
you
don't really hear too much about like their drama because it's like you lose one half of the excitement of it because it's like, oh my god, like this person and that person, both celebrities that we know. Are doing this thing, but it's like, oh, Hugh Jackman has a wife who he just divorced. Like,
now that's news, but it wasn't for 41 years. Who out of the 7 husbands, if you can name them, was your favorite?
Oh shit, what was his name?
Harry Cameron.
Yeah, Harry. It's gotta be Harry.
So there was Ernie Diaz, who she married when she was 17, 16.
Actually, before you get into naming them all off,
Go.
I did also like the Celia's brother at the end.
Yeah.
Like, that was
Robert Jameson.
That was a good setup. Like, he was a solid guy.
Yeah, he was. I mean, there was no love there, but he was a great beard.
Yeah.
He's a good man.
We love a great beard.
But I'm not into their relationship. I just think he was a good character.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was Ernie Diaz, who she married when she was like 17. Don Adler, who was the abusive one. And the other movie star, Mick Riva, which was hilarious. That whole chapter was just ridiculous.
I realized today that Mick is in like 3 of these books now.
Yeah.
Christ. And like the one he's not in is Daisy Jones and the Six.
I think that... Yeah, which is funny because he's a musician. You're right. I don't think he's in that one, but he's definitely in all the other ones.
Was he? He wasn't the guy that Daisy lost her virginity to, was he? Because I just remember her losing it to a really a way older guy.
Daisy Jones lose her virginity to? I love Google. An older man, a famous drummer.
Oh, a famous
At
drummer.
14,
That is not Mick.
goddamn. Sorry, but yeah, we'll go back to Evelyn Hugo. Sorry, I
Okay.
touched my mic.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
I
it's
think Harry
wild.
Cameron is the best husband for sure.
Of course. Okay, sorry to
Yeah.
cut you off there. But yes, Mick somehow in 3 of the 4 modern or core
Yeah.
TJR books. Yeah.
So Rex North is the husband after McGreeva, and he was a fellow actor alongside actually Celia and Evelyn. He was in that movie they did, Anna Karenina or something, and she fell for him, but I think they had more of a friendship because he knew that she was with Celia, and then he fell in love with another actress and got her pregnant, and that's why they ended, which led to Evelyn marrying Harry Cameron, which was her 5th marriage.
But who was, they were already close.
They were best friends, but it was to cover up that they were like not actually like in love, her and Rex, and she made it seem like she was cheating on Rex to keep her like persona active.
Yes.
Like everything she did was a manipulation. And then she was with Harry Cameron for years, and he had the other partner, which we know eventually passed, which was like a big point in the book, the big spoiler. Her and Harry have the daughter Connor, which I loved for a girl's name, by the way. The daughter Connor.
Connor?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it was OR. And then after Harry Cameron, after they got the divorce, then she married Max Gerard. If you remember, he was like the director, the French director, who was just such a douche.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I hated him. And then the last of the 7 husbands was Celia St. James' brother, Robert Jameson, which was fully a beard so that they could live together in Italy. And be together, and he lived with them, and Robert had a really good relationship with Connor, almost like a father, because Harry Cameron had passed at that point.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, all throughout she was in a on again off again relationship with Celia St. James. We're talking lesbians, folks.
Which I loved, like Celia and I mean, to be fair, it wasn't the most healthy relationship. It was a tumultuous relationship between them. But at that time, to be lesbians and be in Hollywood was like, that's so many factors to factor in against what they were up against.
Well, I guess like a big part here, and like, God, it's such a thing for us two to be talking about this particular book and this particular relationship, because we're not really coming from any sort of
like queer background.
Yeah,
we're both straight in that way.
Yeah, but we do love TJR, so.
But I loved it. I loved the representation.
But I think that like, well, one, not both lesbians. Evelyn Hugo is bisexual. And we don't want any bi erasure here. But that, I think, was a bit of a contentious issue between their relationship, because a lot of it was Celia being like, how are you enjoying your time with these men that you're pretending, that you're pretending to be, married to. You are married to them, but pretending to love.
Yeah. And that, I mean, inevitably their last breakup before they end up together was over her sleeping. Remember with Don Adler when they get put in that movie together, and they have to she doesn't actually sleep with him, but she does like a very intimate scene that Celia's not comfortable with because of who it is, and also because he's a man. Well,
no, I think that the main thing when it came to that wasn't about the situation. It was about Evelyn not communicating.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really important thing here, is that there was he was a man.
She did have insecurities around that, definitely.
Yeah, of course.
Totally.
But the main thing there was the lack of communication.
For sure.
And Evelyn even, I remember her having this thought where it's I shouldn't just talk to her about this. And I think that that's so important, that there were issues in their relationship that weren't just, oh my God, we're a queer relationship in this time, in this world that isn't accepting of us. That isn't the only hurdle that we have to go through, because we have a fully fleshed out actual relationship that has its own problems, as all relationships do, that are outside of just the usual issues that come from the world not wanting us to be together, which obviously is going to be an issue.
Especially in that time.
Well, yeah, and then you have the whole Celia being like, fuck it, let's just tell people, and or let's go join the riots, and Evelyn being like, we just can't do that right now. We can support them financially, we can do what we can behind the scenes, but we just can't come out like that,
No. The comparison I want to bring up is between Evelyn Hugo and Taylor Swift. Look at Taylor Swift now compared to Evelyn Hugo at her age, it's like a vast difference in time, and the world has evolved to a new level. And look how Taylor was treated for having just dated several men in Hollywood. She was criticized. She had to go through her entire reputation era because people called her a slut and people judged her for dating. Imagine in that time marrying 7 men, how big of a scandal that would have been and how the world would have perceived Evelyn. And then on top of that, for her to come out as bisexual, like, that is just like wild to me. I couldn't imagine what she was going through, and I can like understand why she wanted to keep that separate and keep that private, because it was the only true aspect of her life. Everything else, all 7 marriages, were all fake. We know that. None of those were like true. I mean, sorry, Dawn Adler was real in a way. She did love Dawn Adler, but in general, compared to her relationship with Celia St. James, I think like I understand why she would want to keep that private, because that was truly her deepest, most real self. I think there was a line where she asked Harry if she's a slut or a whore. Do you remember that? And she says something like, do you think I'm a whore? And then Harry says something like, I think you're brilliant. I think you're tough. And I think the word whore is something ignorant people throw around when they have nothing else. And I think that translates now to current day as well.
Well, I think it's also the case, too, where, you know, back in the day, divorce was less of a thing.
Totally.
But maybe less so for
That's a good
women
point.
who were, you know, like had their own money and had their own agency and could do their own thing. And I feel like celebrity relationship culture is very different from, like, even today, from general relationships of the plebs like us.
Yeah.
So, you know, it makes sense for, like, just as Taylor Swift has been in all these relationships and gone through them and then written about them.
Yeah. And criticized for them.
Yeah, and criticized. I feel like if Taylor Swift existed in that time, maybe those would have been marriages instead, because...
Agreed. That's a good point. And a lot of people think that there's like fan theories on TikTok that Taylor Swift actually co-wrote and like helped her write this book.
Oh.
Yeah, I heard that the other day on TikTok. There was, I can't remember the reason, but it was something along those lines. And I also, I obviously wasn't around at the time, the fictitious time when Evelyn Hugo was famous, so I don't have like the comparison. I'm assuming it would be like Marilyn Monroe or something along those lines. But if I'm older and Taylor Swift comes out with a book and like this, written by somebody, I would eat that up. That would be like the greatest thing ever released.
Oh my God. And then like to
know what happened with Harry Styles, was that PR? We all know it was. What happened with like Joe Alwyn? Like,
who's the current one? Trevor Kelsey or
Travis? Oh my God, Jen.
Okay, whatever. I don't. I'm
stereotypically, you're the one who should know about this.
I'm outside of both these worlds. All right, I do like Taylor Swift. Great music, but I'm not like paying. Like I said at the start, I'm not paying that much attention to the celebrities and who they're dating and all that.
I have so much to say
and
about
I
Travis Kelsey and Taylor,
really
but I won't
care too much about sports. Let's be honest.
Fair.
Like I like playing them, but I'm not like out here.
Hey,
keeping
you're an athletic
track
guy.
of stats and whatnot. But yeah, like, could you imagine if years from now it's like, oh yeah, you know, like that whole Travis Kelsey thing, that was literally just for marketing reasons.
You think it is? You think that's PR?
I have no idea. Oh, it could be. I think.
I have a theory. I don't think that it's for Travis Kelsey that this is. I think that Taylor and the NFL have God. I think it's so much bigger, because hear me out. Taylor is an international star. NFL is very much localized. And then furthermore on that is things like jersey sales have gone up 400%. Ticket sales. That doesn't actually help Travis Kelsey. That only helps the NFL.
Taylor Swift is indeed bigger than the NFL.
Have you seen that TikTok?
Yeah, I have.
And people are like, all these men are like, there's no way. And they're like, what? Yeah, she definitely is.
She sells out NFL stadiums by herself.
Literally, and they aren't doing that for sports.
Yeah, Travis Kelsey,
they are now.
As I saw on TikTok, Travis Kelsey needs him and all his buddies and their enemies to sell out a whole stadium.
But like, that's the thing is, like, I think it's people are, again, internalized misogyny. They're not seeing how big Taylor actually is because she's a woman. They can't even compute that she is bigger than Travis Kelsey, a like athlete.
Yeah, we really just turned this into the Taylor Swift.
That's okay though. I think there's a big comparison between Taylor Swift and Evelyn Hugo, and I think in nowadays that's like the most understandable comparison, because there's nothing in my life I can compare to this. So I don't know. I just think that back then, like, I just, all I want to say is I sympathize with her keeping their relationship private.
Yeah, and then if they were to have gone public with it, it's not like they would have been legally allowed to get married anyway, because
I do have a thought, though.
Backwards everything has been for so long, and still is in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So Celia St. James has obviously passed away at the time that Evelyn is writing this memoir biography with Monique, and so is Harry Cameron. A lot of them have already passed at that point. And she's choosing to air out all of her dirty laundry to this girl for her to get ahead in her career. Do you personally think it's fair that Evelyn went ahead and did that without actually ever getting consent from those people, whose stories she's sharing, to go ahead and air it all out? Like, do you think there's any sort of gray area in that?
I think it's okay because they're dead.
You think death means, like, it's okay to tell their story?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Like, Harry was obviously openly gay. I think the world knew Harry was gay, and same with Celia. But it was all, again, tabloid rumors.
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. Like, because I might cut this, but, like, I have the idea that once you're dead, you're just gone.
No,
so
totally. I think that's not something you need to cut. I think that's your personal belief, and I don't think you're pushing it on anyone, but I have the same thought. But at the same time, your legacy does continue, is, I think, the point of this.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it is just like what family. The truth is. And in these particular instances, maybe less so for Harry, but like for Celia St. James, like she was very much like, you know, hey, like I'm not really hiding this too much.
No, Evelyn kind of closeted Celia in a way.
Bit.
But I also think like Evelyn does point out that even Celia's brother is dead at that point, and their daughter is dead, so there is actually no like lineage left on for Harry or Celia. She's the last living person of that because her daughter never had kids, so it really is the end of their line. So it's just their legacy because they were famous. It would leave a stain on. But for me personally, I think it actually, for them, clears it.
Yeah, I mean, like the idea of leaving a stain on any sort of like
the only person that's really going to be bad for is like Don Adler and Mick Riva.
It shouldn't be bad though.
But like I'm all for like fucking like Taylor Swift, like sing the song about them. I don't give a fuck. If you do bad things, people can call you out.
Oh.
Like I mean the fact that he was abusive to her, like Don Adler. Yeah,
no. Like that leaves like that should leave a stain on them. But like I thought you were talking about like leaving a stain on like Celia and Harry.
No. I mean the other husbands, because I don't really give a fuck but she's doing that without their permission, obviously, and they're also famous.
Oh, I guess that's true.
And they have legacies.
That's where you run up against like libel concerns, but like it depends on if the people are dead or not, and there's like a whole thing.
But personally, I'm like, fuck it, out them. Like, screw those guys.
Yeah, and I mean, Evelyn's dying anyway. So.
Exactly. Well, it's dying. Yeah, she is dying.
Yeah, that was the whole point, right? Like,
she's dying, but also then she commits suicide.
Well, yeah.
At the end.
Like, she knows she's on her way out.
Which is also another whole thing.
Let's get into the morality of... Yeah. It's just suicide. Let's not do that.
We could, but I don't know if that's the vibe. But I am curious, something a little lighter. What did you think of Evelyn's views on beauty? Because that was a big thing she talks a lot about, especially for that time and for a woman. For what stuck out to me was the way that she was like, I know you're supposed to pretend you're not beautiful, but I knew I was beautiful, so I'm beautiful. Like she was so confident about her beauty that it was kind of rare. Like I'm not used to women speaking like that. So for me, that stood out. I don't know if it was the same for you as a man.
Well, I feel like Evelyn saw it as like an asset. For her,
totally.
Obviously. Yeah. It's like the same as someone knowing that like they have a wonderful singing voice and they're like, like I'm
Adele. Just kidding.
This is something that people want, and like that I'll use it to get me where I need to go.
Yeah.
And I honestly appreciated that she was just so straight up about it, because like I don't know, like she never used it to punch down. She was never like, oh, I'm so much like more attractive than this other woman.
Yeah.
So like I should get the part, or Or at
Well,
least I
she
don't-
kind of, well, she didn't say it about attractiveness, but she did assume that she deserved everything. If you remember early on, she would like, somebody would get a role that she wanted, and then they would like basically be bad at it, and she would run right into like Harry Cameron and that other creepy guy, and she'd be like, if you had casted me, I would have been amazing. And she's like, she sucked. Like, she definitely.
But was she saying she sucked because she wasn't as hot as me?
No,
or?
no. That's what I'm not saying that. Like, she definitely had nothing. Like, she never really spoke about beauty as if she was above anyone else, but she definitely was confident about other things as well, just in general. I don't know why I made that point since we're talking about beauty.
Yeah, I feel like yeah, exactly. Like in those instances, she also knew she was a great actress.
Yeah.
So,
But she like used it to get men. She used it to get into certain rooms. Whereas like for me, I'm like, girl, if you got it, use it. And like, good for you for the confidence of knowing it. And I remember there was like, it took her quite a while. I think it was until she worked with Max Gerard to do any sort of nude scene. Do you remember that? That was like a big plot point in the story, is there was like, she manipulated Max Gerard to like take out a nude scene. And so the camera cut off right before she would be naked. It was like right to like the point. And so it left audiences wondering, and she had agreed to do a topless, and she manipulated the scene so she didn't have to. And then I think it was later with Dawn Adler when she did do nude, but she was like it's funny, she was sexualized so much like Marilyn Monroe, but didn't actually show her body.
Yeah.
Which was like badass.
Well, I also feel like, she knew that this was the game.
Totally.
Right? Like, she knew that was
She
the
knew it
case.
since she was 14.
And the idea of her being like, I don't know, like how society expects women to be, of like,
Yeah.
oh, yes, I'm attractive. But like, no, I'm not. Like,
Yeah, I'm
I'm
pretending not to
so
be.
modest and whatever. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, she's already existing outside of that societal norm by being a movie star. So yeah, she can own it. I mean, anyone can own it, but like for her, it's very much like, why are we beating around the bush here? Like, I'm hot. Like, that's why I'm a movie star.
I think that's kind of, though, like for me, that's why I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. Because if you look at every single one of her main characters in the books, they're all wildly confident. It's like the persona that us as women wish that we had. That's never their issue. It's always like, different things like drugs or, whatever is going on. I'm talking about Daisy Jones, by the way. It's always like some bigger thing. It's never about confidence or like,
I do wonder,
which is
though,
cool. They're all so overly confident.
in these 4 books, yeah.
Yeah,
I haven't
love
read
it.
much of her other books.
And it's not the same in the other ones.
See, with the other ones too, like those are more just like everyday women, like in contemporary romance situations, right?
That's why I love these.
Well, yeah, but with these, the confidence kind of comes with the character circumstance. We have a movie star, we have a pro surfer, we have a rock star, and a pro tennis player, right? Like, these are all women at like the top of their worlds.
Yeah.
In the public eye.
Yeah.
So yeah, like obviously they're all incredibly confident and like good on them for that, but it would be nice to have this general confidence like translated over to like the every woman.
Oh God, I wish. That I think that's just for any woman. I think we could all use a little bit of Evelyn's confidence in a way, and her like drive to succeed.
Oh yeah, and
I mean,
sure
there is like a little bit of gray area in how far she goes to, succeed in life, but
yeah, and then like on the very far end of that, you've got Carrie Soto being like, I'm the fucking best.
yeah. But like Evelyn does make some ethically ambiguous, is that a good choices?
That
like,
works.
so speaking of that, what did you think of Monique before we get into that?
Well, I was initially like, oh, here's another classic journalist protagonist narrator situation, because like there are just so many of those in fiction and writing, because it's just close enough to author that like it exists.
You hate authors and books, isn't that you who told me
I
that?
really do. Yeah, it's like, just come on, like.
I feel like I knew that about you because that's what you do. You're a journalist, so when somebody's like an author or a journalist, Chan just automatically hates it.
Well, no, I don't automatically hate it, but I'm like, frame this a bit of a different way than your current existence. I liked how it paid off.
Yeah.
You know?
I always think, like, what would you have done if you were in Monique's position? Meaning, what was the magazine she worked for?
I have no
Savon
idea.
or something?
I
can't remember, but she works for a magazine. And basically, Evelyn puts her in a position where she has to choose between going against the magazine and publishing Evelyn's book. And of course, Monique is smart, and she ends up being able to finagle it. So she puts, like, an excerpt in the magazine, which helps them. But then she writes the book, which will obviously propel her future, which is the point of her choosing Monique. But what would you have done? Would you have gone against, I mean, literally, would you have gone against, hypothetically, if you were still at your old company, would you have gone against for this opportunity?
I mean, yeah, of course, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Sometimes you got to put yourself first.
If Taylor Swift was like, "Hey, Chandler,
oh my god,
you want to write my life story?" Because
she would say it to me. I saw your article about dating in Calgary.
Because my friend ran your dad over earlier. No, that's not how that happened. But
I was gonna say, oh sorry, I kicked you. I was gonna say, I was gonna bring that up though about why she chose Monique. Did you see that coming?
No,
I did not at all.
Yeah.
I was curious because I had actually read them out of succession. So you're supposed to read Evelyn Hugo first and then Daisy Jones, and I read Daisy Jones first. So in Daisy Jones, it's again, you find out the spoiler that the person interviewing the band is somebody related to the band, like she has a tie-in. Yeah. So naturally I was like, oh, what's Monique's story? So I was kind of looking for it, but the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid writes about the incident in which Monique's father was killed and Evelyn covered it up, essentially to protect Harry Cameron. And that's how Harry Cameron dies as well. So
it was more protecting his legacy than anything, right?
Totally. Because, and so she threw this, and also he's black as well, to point out is Monique's father is of color and Harry Cameron is not. And she protected Harry Cameron and there was no like investigation into it in any way. So it just worked for her at that time, which is absolutely chaotic to me and absolutely crazy. So you didn't see the twist coming. What did you think when it happened? How did you feel towards Evelyn?
Probably shouldn't have done that, to be honest. Maybe shouldn't have done that.
You don't do that.
I mean, it's really fucked up to like find a car crash scene and then start moving bodies around. That's for sure.
Especially the person you love most in the world at that time is Harry. That's her best friend, the father of her daughter.
Yeah, and like I take a pretty hard stance. He was drunk, right?
Yeah, he'd been drinking.
I take a pretty hard stance against drunk driving.
Totally. And that's what Monique's father went down for, that he was drunk driving and killed himself.
And that was his legacy.
Totally.
Right?
Because she switched it just because she had power in the world and she had the luxury of doing that.
But yeah, I mean, it's morally ambiguous, right? Like it's...
How would you have felt finding that out as Monique in her shoes in Evelyn's home and being asked to do... How would you have felt about her being like, this is my gift to you, essentially?
Oh, that's tough too, because there's like so much weight already on like, here's this person who is going to like basically give me money and fame.
Yeah.
If I do her memoir.
But
and that's
morally, she fucking is the worst.
Yeah, and I understand Evelyn wanting to give context and like, tell her story. But maybe don't have, that dangling carrot of, hey, if you're cool with me, write my memoir. Also, I fucked with your dad's legacy.
Well, the part that got me was the next day after she found out, she had to go back to Evelyn's house, and that's the last time she ever sees Evelyn. And remember, they're doing the photo shoot. So Evelyn's doing the photo shoot, and she's like, Monique, come on, get in the photo with me. And so she like takes a photo, so Monique has it for the book. But at the same time, she just found out, and then Evelyn's like, come on over and smile. Like, to me, I was just like, Evelyn is still so calculated.
Well,
and I know she was planning to commit suicide, but like, give the girl a freaking time to breathe.
I also think that that might touch on the whole like, you gotta have a bit of a persona in that industry.
It's crazy though.
And smile even if you're not feeling like smiling, which is horrid. But
yeah, I love this book though so much because it is like deep. Like Evelyn's not always someone you root for. That's how I felt about it. That's how I feel about honestly most of her characters in her books.
And I think that that's really important for TJR's books is she's giving you these like really intense, confident.
Almost like raw, though.
Yeah.
Like you see that very confidently. Yeah, but then you see the raw side of their errors, their mistakes.
Oh, absolutely. And like it's easy to present protagonists and narrators as, you know, because you're in their head. So you're seeing everything from their point of view. You're empathizing with them because you're in their shoes as a reader. But then, you know, I think it is bold of TJR to offer us characters that like do have faults and do bad things and like are mean a lot of the time, especially in Carrie Soto's.
Oh my god, I love Carrie Soto.
But yeah, I love Carrie Soto too. But would we if she wasn't like so like?
Yeah, I think I would if Carrie Soto was now and she was the ball buster she was in those books. If she was like famous now playing tennis in this world, I would absolutely love her. If Evelyn Hugo's book was published in 2017, which is the time that Evelyn dies in the story, do you think that the world would be open-minded?
By her book, you mean like the fictional book?
Yeah, of course.
Monique.
Like if this is, but put yourself in it. Say this is all real. You're living in the world. She's famous. She just passed away, and next year Monique's dropping her book. Do you think the world would be susceptible to it? Susceptible is not the right word. Do you think the world would be supportive of her and Cecilia, of her story?
I mean, asking if the world as a whole would be accepting of anything is.
I mean, there'll always be people who hate her. Yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying.
It's always good. I'm sure that there would be a lot of people.
I just think the support would be so much better than if they had to come out at the time.
Oh, of course, yeah. Totally. I mean, that's what progress is, and
totally.
You know, I'm sure I would hope that 10, 20, 30 years from now, there'd be even more people who don't see that as like a big deal. Because like it really shouldn't be. And we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go from here. But there's always going to be, you know, shitty, bigoted people who are opposed to that. Especially, I could see there being a lot of backlash from men specifically, where it's like, oh my God, this like super hot actor that I had a poster of on my wall turned out to be like into women. That's
I mean, that's that generation too.
Yeah,
they would be fun. There was so many times in this book where I was literally reading and like snapping because I was so obsessed with her take at that time of being like such a feminist, essentially.
Wait, like snapping like you're in like a cool like slam poetry place?
Yeah, like sing it Celia, or sing it Evelyn. Like I was so stoked about some of the stuff that was written in that book. I just was absolutely encapsulated by Evelyn Hugo. Even though she was abrasive and harsh and calculating, she was still such a badass. And when you compare her to somebody, like that's why you can't really compare her to Marilyn Monroe or like those women, because those women were the sweethearts of America. Evelyn was like not.
But I mean, like to the world,
they called her whores. The whole book, they called her a whore.
Well, the media.
They destroyed her. That's what I'm saying. And she wasn't America's sweetheart. None of these people were America's sweethearts in the books. None of them. Except for maybe Nina Riva, from Malibu Rising, potentially.
I think that's one of the things with Evelyn Hugo is usually when an actor gets like absolutely decimated by the public, by the media, they're gone, you know, like they fall out of grace. You don't see them for I mean, that kind of happened with Winona Ryder in the 90s. I mean, she's back
having
now,
a resurgence, Stranger Things.
But you know, that's kind of the case with Evelyn Hugo. She went through that, but you know, because she's fictional and because she's Evelyn Hugo, like you know, she worked her way through it and recovered and got back in.
I still can't believe you gave the book 4 stars, man. It's so good.
Instead of 5?
Yeah, it's a 5. Did you give any of her core 4 or 5 other than Carrie Soto? Yeah, I do. You were gonna.
Here's the thing about me giving 5 stars. It's not like these are just my reviews that I put on Instagram. By the way, like this isn't
like they're
my
all
Goodreads.
Written so well.
I wouldn't bring down a Goodread rating for my own. Because, like, I factor in, like, what impacts me. Like, what will sit with me.
I guess, like, just as me being a woman, this definitely hit me harder.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But, like, I wouldn't say I gave it 4 stars instead of 5 stars because, like, I'm not coming from a female perspective.
No, I know.
It is a good book, but, like, I don't think it's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. I don't think, like, I learned something, like, you know, crucial about the world, or like.
I mean, I think your standards might be a bit high on those 5
They
stars.
indeed are, because 5 stars is 100%. That's why I do
know.
4.5 sometimes. And
I also rate books like this very differently than like some of the other contemporary romances we go through, like some of the fluffier stuff that we'll talk about in the future, like just to keep them on the same scale, like you giving like something by like Tessa Bailey a 4-star as well. Like it's so hard because I feel like they're judged very differently. Like the writing is not at the same level.
Oh, I see what you mean. But yeah, I'm definitely
tricky.
not. I'm never rating them based on like exclusively the writing.
No, I know.
Or anything. It's more just like my own personal feelings.
Fine.
About
feels
books.
very like influenced. It could be like the mood you're in and like.
Oh, absolutely.
I hate that, but that's fair. That's
I'm
everybody.
not being super objective about like how I feel.
I'd really like you to break it down for me.
Yeah, of course.
Write me an essay about it.
I do. I write my little reviews on Instagram story. You can go look at them.
They're gonna be great. I do actually read them. You do great.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know I'm supposed to be the one pushing for us talking more about the book side of things here, but I feel like we missed out on quite a bit of the relationship situations.
Yeah, we did.
There's 7 of them. There's 8 of them. Really.
Evelyn's just so fascinating to me that I'd rather talk about her than the men, honestly, which is the whole fucking point.
Actually,
I don't
yeah.
give a fuck about the men. Evelyn's the badass.
Fair. And I think that was like a really great aspect of the book where like
Which is why it should deserve 5 stars.
When I saw the title, I was like, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's like, why is TJR centering the title and the book around men?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, plot twist, the love of her life wasn't a man.
Yeah.
The romance, the relationship that the book is actually about is Celia.
Yeah.
And I guess we did talk about Celia. So what's the point of us going over those men?
So, do you want to do the closing thing?
Or
do you want me to do the same one I did last time?
What did we do last time?
I said, thanks for joining us on this episode of Read the Room. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review if you can. Your feedback really helps us on the platforms. And don't forget to connect with us on social media as well.
See, the way you talk changes so much when you're reading it off.
Why? How
You can
does it
tell.
change?
It feels so scripted.
Does it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I sound authentic.
No,
when I speak.
because you're looking at the thing, you're reading it.
Oh, whatever.
Everything
I didn't
she
forget
said.
anything.
And that's been it with Evelyn Hugo. Catch us next week for
Daisy Jones and the Six.
Good old Daisy Jones.
Yeah.
And the rest of them. All right, we should
And
do
the
this again
guys we
sometime.
don't care about other than Karen. Just kidding.
Oh yeah, Karen rocks. I'm
Karen's
excited
the
to talk about
best.
Karen and Graham
Oh
more
my
than
god.
anything.
Okay, well, we'll get into that.
Well, no, this is a little teaser.
1970s. 1970s.
All right, goodbye, everybody.
Bye.